So it's a cold Sunday in March and I thought I'd come out to a muddy run, and where else better to really test out the A7 III for its autofocus capabilities. I mean, come on, it looks like it's going to be good. No ideas it's going to go, it's my first review ever. We're going to test out the autofocus, the buffer, all those kind of good things. Some water going off in the background you probably can hear. Lots of nutters really running around in mud all day. What can go wrong, right? So the first thing you'll notice on the camera when you pick it up in your hand is just how incredibly solid it feels. You've got all the typical kind of stuff you expect or should expect from the modern A7 series. You've got obviously 2 memory cards. One of them is a UHS 2, which is brilliant. Would have been nice for both of them to be a UHS 2, but hey, it is what it is. The buffer so far, that's not even closing, there we go. So far the buffer has been pretty good. I wouldn't recommend this potentially for sports, but let's just give it a go. Keeps going. Oh, there we go. And the buffer's filled out, and took about 30 shots. I'm just waiting for it to clear. La 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 la. Still going. So as I say, not really a sports camera, but this is shooting RAW and JPEG at the same time to both memory cards. Still going, still going. I can access the menu though, so that's at least something. And yeah, it's finished now, the buffer, so that's pretty good. Overall, pretty happy. Another thing I absolutely love about this camera is just the ergonomics of the actual button layout. Did a video recently about how I set up my camera for weddings. Obviously today, no weddings, but I mean, look at these lunatics. Anyway, enough of that. But the button layout is really, really good. So you got the joystick here, you got the customizable buttons just there. It's just really well thought out. Thank you, Sony. Perfect for weddings. For these situations, I'll test it out in a minute. But so far, really loving it. The only thing I don't like is the touchscreen. It's pretty much useless. Don't bother with it. You're not going to enjoy it. It's like Sony just forgot to actually program it. The only thing you can do is quite literally have an image like this, dodgy image. You can tap to zoom in, which is great. You can't, there's no swiping at all. You can't do anything. What's the point? I can't even, so if I tap, it will just tell me where the focus should be. I can lock on there, but it won't actually focus on that point. So I have to then refocus. So the touch operation on this camera it's pointless basically. Just don't even bother with it. Just turn it off, leave it off, and leave it at that really. Cool. So this is a little bit random. I actually bumped into a couple I shot their wedding 5 years ago. They recognised me instantly. How cool is that? I'm so chuffed. But anyway, on with the race. So far the autofocus seems to be pretty damn good. It locks onto people's faces really quickly, even moving people. Let's have a quick check. No problem there, it just picks up on the face instantly. As they're moving, it doesn't always get the eye instantly, but it picks up the face very well. So can't really complain for that. So sports wise, if you're going to use it for sports, as long as you're not running off hundreds of images at once, you'll be pretty happy. It locks onto focus very, very quickly. I'm pretty confident with this camera. I'm not really a sports photographer, but so far, very, very, very good.
Yeah, tapes up like right.
Right, so something you've got to really notice about this camera, or I've noticed about this camera I should say, is the actual startup time from completely off to on. In situations like this where you've got to just instantly have a camera on, like a DSLR, it's just instant. This takes a second or two, probably a second and a half let's say. It is noticeable, so just leave the camera on and you're not going to really have any issues. Again, the autofocus on this is just picking up people's faces really, really quickly. I've got the autofocus for the face on the AF on even. It works absolutely fine, no problems there, no issues whatsoever. I've shot, I don't know how many pictures now, just under 200 images. I'm on 93% for the battery. The battery life is superb on this compared to the old Sonys. Have no complaints there whatsoever. Again, the camera feels really rugged. It's a pretty good camera so far. So other than the slightly slow startup time and ever so slightly laggy EVF on this camera, it's performing like a champion. What can I say? Been pretty good. The autofocus is superb. The screen on the back seems pretty clear. The images, so far, nice and sharp. Really, it's just all good. I know some of the sharpness comes from the lens, but hey ho. The controls on it, absolutely superb. Remember, just make sure you got it all set correctly and you're good to go. Overall, this is a very, very good camera. It's fast, it's responsive, it does exactly what it should do. The A9 probably is a little bit better still, but hey, that's what, £2,000 more, so what can you do? Otherwise, yeah, really liking this. If somebody was to ask me straight up, what do I think the strengths of this camera are? I would say it's the autofocus. It's simply fantastic. I can't stress that enough. It's just really, really good. When you are looking through and you're trying to get the face and the eye in focus, it just nails it pretty much every single time. Will it miss? Yeah, any camera is going to miss from time to time, but a majority of the time, this nails focus. And once it gets it there, it's absolutely pin sharp. At least it is on the back of the camera. I'm going to look at the files in a little bit. So some of the weaknesses I found at this point in time is the EVF is ever so slightly laggy. The startup time on the camera can be ever so slightly slow, so I would just leave it on basically, and then the start time is going to be significantly faster. Otherwise, that's my main kind of gripes with the camera at this point. I do love the controls and the layout. So that's massive bonus. The buffer is it's okay, but I wouldn't recommend this for sports shooting. It's good, but it's not great. You're going to be far better off if you can stretch to the A9. I know it's a lot more money, but the buffer is going to be a lot better. For weddings, you're not going to have an issue, but the buffer will fill up very, very quickly for sports. So that's where I would say probably not. You're probably better off with a DSLR or, yeah, like I say, the A9. Otherwise, it's a great camera. I am definitely going to have a second one of these when I get the opportunity. It's just so good. So let's take a second to have a look at the colours from the Sony a7 III. And I'm going to leave these two images up here for a second, just so you can have a good look for yourselves. Now, coming from a Canon background, we're all pretty much aware of how famous the Canon colours are with skin tones, etc, etc. So I just want you to have a look at these images. I'm not going to tell you which one's which. I want you to take a second to have a look and see for yourselves whether you can see any real differences. And if you can't see any differences, is there really an issue with the colours coming from Sony? I personally think that both these files look pretty good, pretty usable as well, and any slight errors or potential changes that I need to make, I can do that very, very easily in post. One is on the 5D Mark IV, one is on the a7 III, both are using the Sigma 35 art. With both cameras, I use auto white balance as well, so you choose, you tell me which one's better. So let's have a look at dynamic range. This shot was taken 5 stops under, and you can see brought back by 5 stops. And just look at that detail. That's 5 stops brought back from almost pitch black. Ridiculous. Autofocus performance, as you can see, it locks onto the eye, no problem at all, tracks everything. It's very fast and responsive. Watch this, bam! No problems at all. Lock in focus, tracking, it's just awesome. So a few other noteworthy things on this camera. I'm going to go through these in a kind of like just a list order, so yeah, it's just going to make it nice and easy. So one of the things I really like about this camera, let's just whack it on a second, and that's when you've got, say, a picture like this. I don't know how well you can see that, but when you zoom in, it goes straight to the eye. Now, imagine if I had the focus point just up here, that's exactly where it would focus, but just doing this, that's brilliant. What this is going to allow me to do on a wedding day, and remember, this camera is more aimed at professional wedding photographers. It's not really aimed towards the general public. It's definitely aimed towards professional wedding photographers. At least I think so. But doing this little thing with just focusing straight on the eye, or zooming in straight on the eye, I should say, it saves me just a fraction of the time, and I can go through my images, just make sure everything's perfectly in focus and move on to the next situation. Like I say, it's just that little bit of time. It just helps a little bit. It's the tiny things in life, because a typical DSLR, when you focus in, it goes straight to the center point, and this isn't always where we want to look. Maybe we focused over here, and that's where we have a focus point. But if it's looking then, it's just these little things. I've got a fast around. So this is a tiny point, but it's a really big point. I love it. Another thing I've mentioned is the battery life. You can do most of a wedding day with one single battery. I've not run out of battery power just yet, but there have been times later in the day, after 5 weddings, you got to remember, that I felt like I could potentially need a second battery, maybe after the speeches later on in the evening, or maybe just before the first dance. I want to just reach in my pocket, grab another one. However, Sony, in the infinite wisdom, they are charging 75 flipping quid for one battery. That's daylight robbery in my eyes. Sony, sort it out. I'm going to buy third-party batteries as soon as they come on the market. I'm buying a couple of them because I'm not being mugged by Sony. Sorry, that's my opinion. I know some people will only buy the genuine, legitimate products, but I've never had a problem with third-party batteries. I've used them on my Canons, my Sonys, the A7s and stuff like that. Never had an issue. Another brilliant feature on this camera, and that is the silent shooting. You can literally hold the camera up to your ear, take a few pictures, and you will not hear anything. It's perfect for wedding photography, especially in churches. It can be good for actually press events. There's a bloody bee around there somewhere. Really good for press events as well, because you just get all that click, 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 and now we don't have to have that. And it's really good for, like I say, for wedding photography, because I don't have the vicar giving me like a dirty side look, saying, will you turn that freaking thing off? No, I can just take my pictures. They don't even know I'm there. So this is a brilliant feature, and it's also good for like the bride and grooms as well, because sometimes they are very conscious of the camera, and now I can just take pictures and they don't even worry about me. I'm just taking pictures, bang, 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 bang. They don't even know what I'm doing. It's brilliant. Love this feature. It's not exclusive to Sony again. A lot of cameras have this, especially now, more mirrorless. So yeah, perfect. Love it. One thing I really have noticed on this camera, and it's a tiny little thing, but it's definitely worth noting, and that's the autofocus speed. I did mention about the autofocus performing extremely well. It's super accurate. It nails focus pretty much perfectly every single time. However, there is a little something, and that's the continuous autofocus is faster than the single point autofocus. So, you know, your typical like focus, recompose, that kind of focusing is ever so slightly slower than the continuous focusing. It's so small, it's probably not even worth really noting. But I've actually seen it, somebody else wrote this, or write this down on a Facebook forum, and they've noticed that the continuous focusing is a little bit faster. So it's not just me, somebody else has noticed this too. So what's wrong with this camera? Well, I'd say the menus are a little bit complex. There's just so much in here. You just kind of go through them, and it's just an overwhelming amount of things and options to choose from, and it can just be a little bit complex for a lot of people. There's things in here I've got no idea what they do. I've looked up on the guide, and it's just a little bit beyond me, to be honest. I mean, I'm guessing most of those features are for video, which is probably why they go a little bit beyond me, because I'm not a videographer, I'm a photographer. So things in there, I don't know what they are, so bear with me on that one. You know, if you're a videographer, they probably make a lot more sense to you, but hey ho, like I say, I'm a photographer. Another little thing that is not necessarily a negative for the camera, because this is the same for any mirrorless camera, and that's when you're changing lenses. You're exposing, when you do this, you're exposing the sensor straight away to all the elements. It's something that can't be escaped from, but it's definitely worth knowing about, because if you're, let's say, I don't know, out somewhere and it's a dusty environment, changing lenses, you're going to get dust on your sensor straight away. It's not like a DSLR, because the sensor is actually hidden behind lots of mechanical things. You know, it's just a pitfall of actually mirrorless cameras. And if you're a landscape photographer, you're going to come up against this quite a lot. I come up against this, and I'm a wedding photographer, and we're in usually nice venues, or sometimes we're outside, but you know, most of the time we have multiple cameras, so we don't have to worry about it. We've already got different lenses on different cameras. But if you're a travel photographer, you're definitely going to come across this. You want just a sensor cleaning set, and you'll be fine. Just take it nice and easy. and you don't have to worry about it too much, but it's definitely worth knowing about. So just be careful, please. I don't want you to ruin your camera sensor. As I said, the cost of a second battery, 75 quid. Sony sort this out. If you don't want third-party batteries on the market, lower your prices. It's really, really simple. Also, you don't get an actual charger for the battery out of the box. You've got to buy that as an addition, basically. You can get third-party chargers. That's probably the way I'm going to go, because I don't want to be just charging the battery on the camera. It's fine. Again, if you're traveling, this is going to be actually a bonus for you, but for me as a wedding photographer, when I get home at the end of the wedding, and I've got another one tomorrow, I want to be able to charge batteries really, really quickly, multiple batteries at once as well, and I can't just simply charge them in camera. So yeah, it's a little bit of a negative. And I think, you know, Sony, for about this camera's actually costing us, put a battery charger in there, or even a second battery. Come on, guys. It's not exactly going to count to your profit. Please get this sorted. Okay, one thing that a lot of people have been asking about, that's banding in your pictures. You're never going to see it in lighting like this. It's pretty much impossible. You only really see it in fluorescent lighting or ambient lighting. You're inside, I don't know, a wedding venue, and the lights are all over the place. Depending on what the lights are, the actual frequency, I believe, then you might see banding. I've seen it a couple of times, I can't lie, but then when I try to recreate it in the same exact location, same kind of exact kind of lighting, etc., I couldn't get it. So I don't know if it's down to shutter speed or something else. I use the same, pretty much the same settings, I believe, same lens. I couldn't reproduce it, but it has happened a couple of times. When I use the silent shutter, and this is just mainly for silent shutter, you don't see it with the mechanical shutter, but when I use silent shooting in a church, I never had any problems with this. I used, like I say, there's no flash involved in a church, because the churches don't allow it in the UK, but I never had problems with banding. But you might come across it, but I don't think it's an issue. It's not going to stop me buying a second one of these for weddings. I know what it is. I only really use silent shooting in churches, and they're generally reasonably well lit. Sometimes they have like a halogen bulb somewhere, and it's not really an issue for me personally, but you might come across it. That's what I'm saying about it. So yeah, just be careful. Test the lighting out first. If you're, I don't know, a press event, just see what it looks like in camera. Do a quick test shot. You'll be fine, and you're good to go. Another thing, and I've mentioned this a few times, and that is the absolute god-awful touchscreen. It's Sony. You just dropped the ball on this one. There is absolutely no excuse. I mean, look. See, mobile phone, we have a touchscreen. Pretty simple. These have been around for 10 years or thereabouts. I don't know exact timings on this, but why can't you, Sony, put a touchscreen on a £2,000 camera? Even the A9 is exactly the same. It's absolutely rubbish. It's Sony. The capabilities here. I'm going to pull up a picture, a simple picture, and I can do it. I can even move around, and it's absolutely fine. The capability is on the camera. You just need to give us a firmware update. Also, you cannot touch. You can touch the focus, or select whether you want the focus point, but will it focus? Absolutely not. If I change that to video mode, I'm not changing any other settings, I'm just going to video mode. You tap the screen and it will focus on where you want it to go. Why is it good for one and not the other? So I mean, this is just bad programming. It's just ridiculous. Why have you done this? It will work on video, it won't work on photography. Stupid, absolutely stupid, in my opinion. You need to get a firmware update for this, and pronto. No excuse for it. Get it done, make your customers happy, and we're going to buy more stuff from you. The last thing I really want to talk about on the negative sides at the moment, and it's not actually on the camera at the moment, but it's something that Sony's tried to implement in the past, and I hope they don't put it on here, and that's their goddamn App Store. What the hell? I mean, we all know at this point that Sony make the PlayStation or PlayStation 4. I've got one at home, and they have an App Store on there where they try and sell you games and DLC for those games, etc., etc. It seems like they're trying to do that with cameras. They put out this camera, they try and include an App Store, hoping you're going to buy things like multiple exposure, time-lapse, etc., etc. Clearly that didn't catch on, but it's still things that they're missing on the camera. Are they going to try and sell that to us at a later point, trying to make a little bit more money out of us? Oh, buy this multiple exposure app for 10 quid. get stuffed. No way, I'm not doing it. I'd rather just not take a multiple exposure. Give us time lapse for God's sake. You can do this in a firmware update. It's not exactly difficult, but again, I'm really getting. I hope they don't try and implement this in the future updates. Get rid of the App Store. Give us all the features that we want. This is a £2,000 lens, as I've said. Why are you not giving us all these features? I can do time lapse, sure. If I just record a bunch of footage and then compress it down, it's going to look like time lapse. That's fine. Probably put to, I don't know, 2000% speed or something, and it's going to look like time lapse. But why do we not have this feature on the camera already? Multiple exposures. Why is it not on here? There's going to be other modes I can't even think of off the top of my head, but they're not on here. Why? Give us a reason. And if you're trying to sell it to us afterwards, that's just BS, and it's not going to happen. You're going to lose customers.